Well, hello world. I'm here just to do a quick video about my iPhone 6. Um, I do apologise about the light and everything here. It's just bad. It's pouring with rain outside and yeah, it's just a bit all rubbishy really. So I thought let's just stay in, be cosy and make a video. So this is about living with my iPhone 6. Okay, here it is. I've had this since about the 20 something of September. Had a few problems getting it. Um, this this is due to, yeah, there was a kind of frenzy when people first ordered the iPhone 6. I think I don't even think Apple kind of expected there to be as many sort of pre-orders on the first day as that. But I ordered mine a week before it was due to be released on the 19th of September. And the problems were purely down to UK Mail, who were the courier that O2 decided in their wisdom to use. And at one point, it was on a lorry bound for another area of the country, which I found very disturbing, really. So yes, it took about 4 attempts for them to actually deliver it. So yeah, I mean, that was a slight downer on the thing. But once I got it, yeah, you're all right once you got it, aren't you? Yeah. Okay, I've got a cover on mine. Okay. But the first thing I have to say, now, I realise that this problem is supposed to only affect the iPhone 6 Plus. But look, this is not an iPhone 6 Plus, it's an iPhone. Okay. It's straight. Okay. It's not wonky at all in the slightest, okay? It's not being bent, okay? Let's just try and lay it flat in my hand, okay? There are some marks on the plastic screen that are covering it. I do kind of apologise for that, but look, that's straight, okay? I carry it in my pocket all the time. It's, you know, it's a nice size to fit in your pocket. I suppose the iPhone 6 Plus might be difficult if you've got small pockets in your trousers, but yeah, so, you know, and I think again, you know, if you're going to bend something, you're going to bend it, aren't you? I mean, people could have said that about iPads, and certainly there have been videos on YouTube about people bending all kinds of different kinds of phone. You know, a phone will bend if you try and bend it. Yeah, I don't think that, you know, people just sitting down with a 6 Plus in their pocket is actually going to be that you know, harmful to it, unless you've got it in your back pocket, I suppose, and you know, you really do put some pressure on it, you know. But yeah, I think it's silly, really. I just think they wanted something to criticise, and it always seems to be that Apple are the ones that take the criticism. I suppose that, you know, if you're making Samsung Galaxies or something like that, the Samsung Galaxy did a pretty nasty ad about you know, having a little dig at Apple by saying, you know, you can use our phone, it doesn't matter, you know, how skinny your trousers are. But yeah, you know, they're not getting the flack, but you know, I bet you that, you know, a few Samsung phones also will bend as well. Okay, I just think the whole thing's a bit silly, really. Okay, so I've got mine. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the battery life, because I'm really impressed with this. It's really economical with battery life compared to my iPhone 5, which seemed to, I suppose now, you see, I've had this for about a month. I could never ever get more than a day's use out of it. I can with this, okay? At the moment, because I need it for alarms and all sorts of other things like that, I don't really want to, so I still charge it every day. But, you know, when I'm just loafing around at home during the holidays or whatever, then yeah, you know, I can go for ages and ages without recharging this, and it is nice. It's much more reliable, much more comforting to realise that you've got a phone with some battery on it. Okay, and also when you get down to the I've only got 20% left, that 20% actually lasts, you know, with the iPhone 5 that I had, particularly after I installed iOS 8, which seems to be very battery heavy. your 20% battery would soon become 13%. Then it would start whinging about only having 10%, and then you'd be very lucky, to get another 5 minutes usage out of it once it's on 10%, because it's going and off. Okay. You can calibrate your battery by letting it turn itself off and then completely recharging it, and then just making sure that you don't charge it when you've got like 30% or something, but wait till it's gone right down and that sort of thing. But yeah, this is a much better battery life, just has to be said. Okay. I like the size of it. I find using the keyboard slightly easier. That was one of the things I talked about when I first talked about getting the iPhone 6. It's much easier to use. The new predictive text is a bonus as well. It's nice to actually have that. It just makes life an awful lot easier. Although it has to be said that there's a slight bug here. I don't know whether or not other people have noticed it, but sometimes the new predictive text anyway, decides to turn itself off. Which is not very convenient sometimes, and you can be using it for a little while and think, well, hold on, where's the predictive text gone? And if you go back into settings, and so if you go settings, general, and then go to keyboard, I'm doing it now and I'm not even showing you, but and I don't think you can see that anyway, but then turn the predictive off, and then turn it back on again, and that will sort it out. Okay. So yeah, that's a tiny glitch, but over and above everything, I like the predictive text because I am quite a social animal, really, and if I haven't got anyone round to play, as it were, watching a DVD or whatever, just around in the flat, whatever, having a coffee or whatever, then I'm just sitting there chatting to people. So yeah, it's nice. Yeah, what else do I like about it? I actually like, now, this is odd to hear me saying this, but there's a couple of games now that I actually quite like playing on it. Nothing particularly heavy, sort of gamey kind of stuff, but I like my Sudoku game, which I've been playing now ever since my nephew Alex introduced me to it. But I also now I like playing Blitz Tetris. Okay, which is very good, highly addictive, and is great to play on the iPhone 6. It's also great to play on the iPad Air. Although I think that the display on the iPad Air, because it's so big, I think it's more pixelated. It's much more compact and neat on the 6. Although you've got the trade-off against the fact that you've got bigger buttons to press and that sort of thing. But yeah, I like Tetris Blitz, and that's dangerous, really, to me, really, because it means that you end up spending money on it, because it's one of those things that's so highly addictive, and when they've just got you to a point where you're about to score something or other, you find you've run out of coins or whatever, and then you have to go onto the iTunes store and get more, which costs money, which is quite it's very cunning. It's an odd marketing strategy, but that does bring me to something here. Okay, one of the things that I really like about this, although I have to say with a caution, but I really like it, and that is the finger identity thing. I'll do that again when you can actually see it. Okay, so I've turned it off. Okay, here's my thumb. Okay, there's my thing, and there, it's beautiful. Isn't that amazing? Fantastic. I've got a few fingers trained to do it, although I tend to forget which one. Doesn't work quite so well in the rain. I was just out in the rain a little while ago, hence hat hair. Sorry, but yeah, it was quite difficult to actually get that to work in the rain. I got a few drops of rain on the screen and on the button, and yeah, didn't like it. But give it a quick wipe, try again, and it works. Okay. Being so used to putting my passcode in, I have to train myself to do the finger thing, but I'm gradually getting there. Also, having an iPad Air, which is still not the Touch ID, also means that I find myself putting in my passcode an awful lot, and that's not helping in this case here. But going back to my Tetris game, on here, if I'm merrily blitzing away here, and I find myself running out of coins, or you need a finisher, which is a way of getting extra points at the end of a game, on here, it's very, very convenient to just use your Touch ID to quickly log into the store, get the thing you want, and then get out again, almost without interrupting your gameplay. So yeah, it's far easier to spend money on this here, but my Apple ID is so big that you know, in terms of, you know, the length of the password, and it involves, you know, different bits of punctuation and capital letters here and there and everywhere, and numbers and all that sort of thing. It's a right pain in the jack to type in, and I suppose that in a sense has curbed my sort of natural will to spend money, and you know, because money does tend to burn a hole in my pocket sometimes. And yeah, so use that function, but use it with caution, okay? Because, you know, it's just another way that, you know, manufacturers and companies and things have got you by the short and curlies, and, you know, another quicker way to have to spend money, and you can almost do it without thinking about it. And then suddenly I got an invoice from Apple with £10, and they're all extras for this blinking Tetris game. So, you know, just be careful. Yeah, so I actually really like my iPhone 6. I regret slightly that I've only got the 16GB version, but then again, I don't, because again, you know, it's a lot more money for the 64GB in terms of contracts and stuff like that. In terms of O2, who I have got this on a contract with, they're Telefonica in Europe, but the main reason why I swapped from EE was due to my poor signal issues. Some of those have been rectified. I'm not going to say that it's an absolute magic panacea, because it isn't, okay? Still, where I work, I find myself turning this off and turning it on again to try and get 3G. It's where I work is notoriously bad for signal, it has to be said. You know, so it's not necessarily O2's fault, except that it is in a sense that, you know, all mobile phone people have got to carry some sort of responsibility. And there is also the balance of, you know, do we really want all these mobile phone sort of telegraphs everywhere, you know, putting out radiation into the atmosphere and all sorts of things like that, because, you know, that has to be considered as well. But even so, it's still not an ideal situation where I work. Where I live, however, it's much better, okay? And it is quite nice to know that I have got 4G in parts of the town where I live, and in other places I've got 3G, which is nice. Yeah, it's actually quite strong, and I do find myself less caught out. You know, having said that, I got an absolutely massive data plan. I got 20GB of data. Thinking that, you know, I would actually be able to get 4G in more places and that sort of thing, and not get caught out, because occasionally, just occasionally, you know, with my old contract with EE, I found myself downloading a couple of tunes from iTunes or something when I was out. You know, I was away for a couple of days and I was in a hotel, and I downloaded a couple of songs, and then suddenly I found that I'd run out of data, and it's happened to me a couple of times now. And then, you know, getting data is extortionate. But I've now got 20GB of data, and, you know, I find that, you know, from a month-to-month basis, you know, sometimes I don't even use 100GB of data. So yeah, I've kind of gone for overkill on that. But again, you never know when you're going to get caught out. And, you know, in the UK, we are lucky to have, you know, contracts that are going to give us 20GB of data. I've just been watching OS First Timers iPhone 6 Plus review. And he's on something like, you know, the biggest data plan there is something like 6 GB of data, which is, you know, it's a medium size kind of, you know, plan over in the UK. So, you know, we are lucky, and it has to be said that, you know, so yeah, that's you know, it's a by the by. Signal is a bit better. I can actually walk into my kitchen and still have Wi-Fi. I can still talk on the phone if I'm in my kitchen, which I couldn't with my other plan. So that's quite nice. And yeah, so I've just got an email notification which just distracted me for a second. What am I talking about? Yeah, you know, so yeah, Signal is better. Okay, it's nice to have 4G in places that I didn't have it before. You know, it until 2017, when this is supposed to be rolled out and it's supposed to be everywhere, it's going to be difficult. But yeah, I like it. Okay. Now, I have just upgraded my iMac to Yosemite. Okay. And with an iPhone 6 and Yosemite, it is rather fantastic because of all the handoff features and stuff like that. I find that when people review mobile phones and talk about living with them and stuff, they never ever talk about the practical things. Now, you know, I still get messages on Facebook from people that are not iPhone people, it has to be said, but from people that whinge about either they've lost their phone or they've got a new phone, they've lost their contacts, you know, or you text someone and they say, "Who's this?" and you say, "It's Mark." Well, yeah, you know, I've lost my contacts, sorry, you know, and that should not be happening in this day and age. Okay, a few years ago now, iCloud, so Apple introduced iCloud, which is a free way as well of being able to store your contacts online, so that you know, and your calendar appointments and everything else online, so that you can put an appointment in or a contact in on your phone and find it on your computer afterwards. Okay, and now that, you know, Yosemite's here with the new handoffs and things, you can be typing an email on here, and you know, you could get bored and fed up with typing it in on here and think, well, it'd be quicker to do it on my Mac. You can go to your Mac and find that, you know, exactly where you left off, there you were, you know, typing away. And you know, it's such a good feature. I mean, the way that, you know, these phones work with a Mac, I'm not going to necessarily say that, you know, get an iPhone 6 if you've got a, you know, a Samsung laptop. Or I keep picking on Samsung, don't I? I don't really mean it, but you know, my mate's got one. It's actually quite nice. But, you know, supposing you have got a Samsung laptop and an iPhone, you can still use iCloud. Okay, you haven't got all the handoff features and everything, but you can still use iCloud. You can still keep your data together. Now, I don't know what the situation is if I were to have something like a Galaxy and a Mac. Okay, would the contact thing be quite so seamless? I used to have a tiny little Sony phone. It was, you know, a few years ago now, and I had my, you know, black Mac laptop thing. So, you know, we are going back to 2006, 2007, 2007 to 8. Sorry, 2008. Get it right, get your facts right. So we're going back to about 2008, and I've got this little Sony thing, Sony mobile phone, and by, you know, a USB connection and a piece of software which I think came with the phone on a CD, I could actually sort of sync contacts and calendar appointments that way, and, you know, it would actually work. It would sort of translate the information from, you know, the Sony calendar and contact applications on there and transfer them onto the calendar and contact applications on the Mac. So yeah, I mean, you know, there really isn't an excuse for it, really. What I would like to see is actually, you know, and here possibly laying down the gauntlet here, if you got a Lumia or a Windows 8 phone or a Galaxy or something like that, you know, a Google Android phone of some description, I don't know the names of them all, but whatever, if you have, when you do a review of them or when you talk about them, please actually show how you're supposed to keep your contacts, calendars, photos, music, and all that kind of stuff in sync. And if you've got a Mac and another phone, sorry, I'm going to have to put my passcode in again because this constantly happens to me. I talk too much. But if you have got a Mac and another phone that isn't an iPhone, tell me how it works. Tell me, you know, how you keep your contacts and photos and everything else and your music in sync with iTunes and iCloud as well, because I'd just like to know. I'd just like to know. I just have this hunch that Apple have got it absolutely spot on right with, you know, not just the iPhone 6, but, you know, with earlier versions of the iPhone as well. You know, my iPhone 4 had no trouble at all logging into iCloud and, you know, keeping everything in perfect sync, you know, and that was, you know, for me, 2 generations of mobile phone ago. You know, we're talking, you know, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now. So yeah, go for it. Okay. Now this video is called Living with the iPhone 6. There's one big thing that I actually cannot live with the iPhone 6 about. Okay, it's a serious thing. Now, again, as I said, it's very easy to target Apple because they're big. Because every time they release something, they put on a keynote and, you know, they make it into the biggest thing, whatever, huge hype, huge advertising campaigns and everything else like that. You know, and they've got this prestige of being the Apple brand and everything. And basically everything they do is fantastic. Okay, look at this phone. Okay, yeah, it's got a cover on it at the moment, but if I try and take the cover off, okay, I'm not going to take the plastic screen off because that's inconvenient, but look, there's the cover, it's taken off, okay, and here's this phone. Look how precision made that phone is, okay, it's not bending, okay, it's, do you know what I mean, it's a lovely phone, extremely well made, works perfectly, okay. These things, people, are made by hand. Okay, I have actually done a little bit of research into it, not hugely extensive, but just a little bit of research into it. But these things are made by hand. Okay, a lot of iPad and iPhone manufacture is sort of shipped out to places like you know, countries in Asia, you know, and China. There's huge Foxconn factories in China. Foxconn make things for all sorts of different computer manufacturers. So they're not, you know, it's not just Apple here, but here we go. This is this, okay? Okay, I'm not going to patronize people, and I'm not going to say, you know, I watched this other video where somebody said, you know, how many of us stop to think how they were made, you know, and who made them and the conditions that people work in when they make them. But, you know, I'm sure we do, okay? I love my iPhone. I feel guilty about loving my iPhone, okay? The reason I feel guilty about it is because the people that make these phones work for, you know, sometimes, you know, 9-10 hour shifts with, you know, maybe, you know, a small break at lunchtime where basically they get a nap because they're so tired that they eat and then they get a little bit of time for sleep, okay? And yeah, Foxconn has got lots of nice airy cafeterias in it and all sorts of things where you can, you know, give the money that you get paid from Foxconn back to Foxconn. You know, but, you know, it's not like workers, do you know what I mean? You know, working in, you know, Oliver Twist time kind of thing. But having said that, it's still not ideal, okay? Let's, you know, look at a few facts. The iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy, it has to also be said, because, you know, the Samsung Galaxy is actually more expensive in China than the iPhone is. But the iPhone is far more expensive in China, which, you know, yes, it's a growing economy and, you know, everybody says like that, but it's basically a growing economy because of the amount of slave labour that's going on there, okay? It's more expensive in China to have an iPhone 6, either to buy one outright or to have one on contract, than it is in the US or the UK. Okay, and it's even more expensive than an iPhone to have a Galaxy, okay? And I've researched that, I know, okay? These people then, they're working, you know, hugely long hours. They have to work in dust-free zones, which makes it very clinical. And yes, you have to be dust-free because otherwise the darn things with a little speck of dust inside in certain places will stop the thing from working. And, you know, that is all, you know, well and good and everything. And yeah, fair enough. If it has to be like that, it has to be like that. But they have to work in total silence, okay? And they are doing the same repetitive tasks for hours and hours and hours every day, okay? Now, you know, I'm not going to say, you know, hand on heart that in the UK factory wages are anything to write home about, because they're not, okay? But I know that, you know, even people that are unemployed in this country are still walking around with smartphones, okay? The people that work in these factories doing this precision labour and everything for Apple, you know, extremely skilled work that I couldn't do, you know, hitting huge targets in terms of the volumes of, you know, product that is produced in these places, could not afford to have an iPhone or an iPad, okay? That's the reality of it, okay? And I think that's rather, you know, a bad thing, okay? The other thing that I'm going to say here, you know, on that kind of ground, is that when you go and watch, well, or watch on, you know, YouTube or something, these big presentations, Tim Cook, or it used to be Steve Jobs, but they would always get the people in California who'd worked on these products and, you know, had the brain power and the idea in the first place. They all stood up, they all got a round of applause. Okay, there is never ever any mention of the people that are working for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day to produce these things. And at the very, very least, those people, you know, could get a round of applause. Those people, you know, the ones who are making it for us, should be entitled to discounts to get these things. I watched as I say, a report on YouTube, actually, so you can find it, but about the Foxconn, and, you know, someone had actually been into where they've made iPads, okay? And, you know, that sort of silence thing, that's Guantanamo Bay. That's, you know, the very first thing, you know, lesson number one in trying to torture somebody, you know, Guantanamo style, is to completely isolate them from any other human being, okay? Or at least have, you know, other human beings there, tempting enough to yell to want to talk to them or whatever, but not be able to. Okay, that is, you know, that's a fact, and that's what they are living with. You know, it is hell. It is, you know, mental torture to them to have to work in these places. Okay, the very, very least that they can do, okay, is to make sure that these things are actually available to them, to the lowest paid workers, because, you know, it is only with that kind of labour and stuff that, you know, China's economy, for instance, is growing. You know, it's $800 or something to buy an iPhone 6, okay? You know, that is just untrue. And, you know, these people, you know, if we are going to, you know, really, you know, make sure that their conditions and stuff are improving, we've got to empower them, okay? You know, Simone Weil, who is a sort of theologian woman, she spent some time in the 30s working in a Peugeot factory. She hated it. You know, she wasn't really cut out for that. She was rich. She didn't have to do it. But what she did was she sort of gave up a lot of creature comforts in order to try and live the way that, you know, the people around her were living. So she went and worked in a Peugeot factory. And, you know, what she said, you know, constantly making the same cog or the same bit of the gearbox or whatever, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, is utterly soul destroying. It's also not empowering. It's not empowering because, you know, if you were going in there and your job was to, you know, build a car from start to finish, or build an iPhone or an iPad from start to finish, If that was your job, then you would then have that know-how to be able to go and maybe start up an enterprise of your own and, you know, do the same thing, you know, and to actually compete. It's just another way of keeping people, you know, that low, just enough to subsist and live on, but also, you know, people who are content are very hard to manipulate. Okay, so if you are just below content, like most people are in this country, and I can imagine, you know, people working in Foxconn or other computer manufacturing kind of places, if you're just below content, then you're slightly easier to manipulate. Okay, and you know, yes. So what I have done, and it's a very tiny thing, but I believe if we all do it, okay, I've gone to Apple, gone to the feedback page. There isn't a specific feedback page where you can just feedback about Apple generally. So just pick one of the things that you'd like to talk about. Okay, I think I chose iPads or something like that, and I wrote them a nice little letter congratulating them on, you know, the iPad, la di da, very nice, blah, 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 very nice. But I said, you know, they are so well made. The people who well made them are not getting a round of applause at your keynotes. Please give them a round of applause, okay? Because, you know, you're not gonna, you know, start telling them about how dehumanizing it is and how disempowering and almost torture level it is, because you don't want to tell these people off. You know, you want to be just a little bit democratic, but just, you know, just drop a little seed in there to say, look, I know, you know, I know it wasn't you who made this. I know that it was some, you know, some slave working somewhere in, you know, some far-flung country in the world. You know, these countries, these whole economies are being kept at the mercy of these big corporations. Okay, you don't want to jeopardize the fact that, you know, these people, it's their wages. Okay, but yeah, you know, just a little drop in the ocean. Please, can we have a round of applause for them? You know, would you please, you know, at your next keynote, you know, once you've said well done to all the bigwigs at Apple for making all this stuff and to bringing it to our, you know, to our global consciousness, let's have a little acknowledgement to them. Okay, because then, you know, once they start doing that, then you can start sort of applying on the things like, what about worker discounts for iPads, you know, or iPhones or something like that? You know, how about making sure that these people that work for you are actually empowered enough to at least be able to use the new technology? Okay, all right, I've been going on now for 33 minutes nearly. I will stop now. Yes, lovely product. Okay, if you're in the market for upgrading your mobile phone at all for any reason, however flimsy, then you could do a lot worse than getting an iPad 6. Okay, all right, but yeah, let's please, you know, whatever mobile phone you use, okay, whatever technology you use or whatever, let's bear in mind the people that work for these companies. Let's make sure that they're getting honest and deserving wages. Right, ta-ra, bye.